12-year-old Jamal had only been at Crestwood Academy for a few weeks. He was quiet, observant, and often kept to himself. Transferring mid-semester to a prestigious private school wasn't easy, especially when you came from a completely different environment. Crestwood was known for its rigorous curriculum, traditional values, and polished students. Many came from wealthy families, wore designer shoes, and spoke in polished, rehearsed tones. Jamal didn't fit that mold. He wore thrifted clothes, carried a second-hand backpack, and didn't say much unless spoken to. From the moment he arrived, Mrs. Whitmore, his music teacher, seemed to single him out. She was stern, old-fashioned, and obsessed with discipline. Her voice was crisp like winter air, and her eyes scanned the room like searchlights. She rarely smiled. "Mr. Jamal," she said sharply one afternoon, "since you claim you've taken piano before, why don't you come show the class?" Jamal hesitated. He had mentioned in passing that he had played at his church back home, but he never said he was good. Now all eyes were on him. A few students chuckled. He could feel the pressure mount. Mrs. Whitmore stepped aside and gestured to the baby grand piano at the front of the room. "Go ahead. Let's see what you've got." It wasn't a suggestion. Jamal walked toward the piano with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The classroom felt colder now, the whispers and glances making it harder to breathe. He could tell Mrs. Whitmore expected a poor performance, perhaps even a mistake that would embarrass him in front of everyone. His fingers hovered over the keys for a moment before he began. What came out was not the hesitant, shaky playing anyone anticipated. Instead, Jamal's hands moved confidently, producing a melody so rich and intricate it immediately filled the room with warmth and wonder. The piece was a complex jazz arrangement, full of emotion and flair. Jamal's eyes closed as he played, lost in the music. The notes flowed effortlessly, each one perfectly placed, demonstrating years of practice and deep passion. The students stopped whispering. Mrs. Whitmore's stern expression softened into one of shock and disbelief. Even the usually aloof principal, who had come to observe the class, leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected performance. When Jamal finished, there was a brief silence, then spontaneous applause erupted from the classmates. Some stood up, clapping with genuine admiration. Jamal's heart pounded, not from fear but from the thrill of having shown his true self without words. Mrs. Whitmore cleared her throat, regaining composure. "Well," she said, "that was impressive." Jamal sat down, a small smile creeping onto his face. For once, the music spoke louder than anyone's doubts. After that unforgettable day, word about Jamal's talent spread quickly through Crestwood Academy. Students who had barely noticed him before now approached with curiosity and respect. Even some teachers who had been indifferent started to take a keener interest. Jamal himself was cautious. He didn't want to get too comfortable. He knew how quickly things could change. But the music room became a place where he felt a rare sense of belonging. He practiced after school, often staying late to perfect new pieces, and slowly his confidence grew. Mrs. Whitmore, who had initially been cold and distant, began to act differently around him. She still maintained her strict demeanor, but there was a new hint of respect in her voice when she gave feedback. No more dismissive remarks or challenging commands to embarrass him. One afternoon she called Jamal aside after class. "You have something special," she said quietly. "I was wrong to doubt you." Jamal blinked, surprised. "Thank you, ma'am," he replied, feeling the weight of those words sink in. It was the first time a teacher acknowledged his effort without skepticism. That same week, Jamal was invited to perform at the school's upcoming talent showcase. This was a huge opportunity, one that could change how others saw him and, more importantly, how he saw himself. But with the opportunity came new challenges. Some students who once mocked him began whispering again, suspicious of his sudden rise. Rumors spread, some fueled by jealousy, others by discomfort with change. Still, Jamal was determined. He would not let fear or doubt stop him. Music was his voice, and he planned to use it to tell his story. The night of the talent showcase arrived, and the school auditorium was packed with students, teachers, and proud parents. The air buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Jamal sat backstage, fingers tapping nervously on his knees, his heart racing like a drum. He glanced around at the other performers, dancers, singers, and musicians, all preparing for their moment in the spotlight. Some smiled encouragingly, while others kept to themselves, eyes fixed on their own routines. Mrs. Whitmore appeared beside him, her usual stern expression softened by a quiet smile. "Remember, play from your heart," she said. "You've earned this." Jamal nodded, taking a deep breath. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage, the bright lights blinding for a moment. The room fell silent. He approached the grand piano waiting for him and settled onto the bench. The keys gleamed under the stage lights, familiar and reassuring. Jamal closed his eyes and began to play. From the first note, the audience was captivated. His fingers danced across the keys, delivering a piece that blended classical technique with soulful improvisation. Every chord told a story of struggle, resilience, and hope. As the music filled the auditorium, the earlier whispers and doubts seemed to vanish. Faces in the crowd softened, eyes glistened, and by the time the final note faded, a wave of applause swept through the room. Jamal stood and bowed, a radiant smile breaking across his face. He had turned what was meant to be a moment of humiliation into one of triumph. Backstage, Mrs. Whitmore clapped the loudest. "You've changed more than just your own story tonight," she said. "You've changed ours too." The days after the showcase were unlike anything Jamal had experienced before. Teachers who had once barely acknowledged him stopped to congratulate him in the hallways. Students who had kept their distance now invited him to join conversations, eager to learn more about the boy whose music had touched their hearts. Even the principal approached Jamal with a warm smile. "Your performance was truly exceptional," he said. "You've brought a new spirit to Crestwood Academy." But perhaps the most meaningful change was in Jamal himself. The boy who once felt invisible now carried himself with quiet confidence and pride. He realized that talent and perseverance could open doors, but kindness and integrity kept them open. Mrs. Whitmore, once cold and distant, became one of his strongest supporters. She arranged for Jamal to have more opportunities to perform and even recommended him for a prestigious summer music camp. Their relationship evolved from strict teacher and wary student to mentor and protege. At home, Jamal's family noticed a new light in his eyes. He practiced with renewed passion, sharing stories of his days at Crestwood and the friendships he was building. Music had become more than just notes on a page, it was a bridge between worlds. Jamal knew challenges would still come, but he no longer feared them. He had learned to face doubt with determination, and to turn moments meant to put him down into chances to rise. In the end, it wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about discovering his own voice, and playing it loud and clear. As the school year progressed, Jamal's reputation as a gifted pianist grew beyond the walls of Crestwood Academy. Invitations came from local community centers, churches, and small concert halls. His music was becoming a beacon of hope and inspiration for many. One crisp Saturday morning, Jamal received a call that would change his life again. A renowned music academy in the city had heard about his performance and wanted to offer him a scholarship to join their advanced program. It was an opportunity most kids could only dream of. Excited yet nervous, Jamal shared the news with Mrs. Whitmore. She smiled, eyes gleaming with pride. "You've worked hard for this," she said. "Now it's time to take the next step." Jamal's parents, who had supported his journey from the start, were overwhelmed with joy. They promised to do everything possible to help him succeed, knowing this was the path he was meant to follow. Balancing school, advanced lessons, and new performances was challenging, but Jamal thrived. The music pushed him to grow, not just as a pianist but as a person. He learned discipline, patience, and the power of self-expression. Through it all, Jamal never forgot where he started. He made it a point to mentor younger students at Crestwood, sharing his story and encouraging them to pursue their own dreams. The boy who had once felt out of place had become a source of strength for others. One evening, after a successful recital, Jamal sat at his piano at home and reflected on his journey. The cruel challenges, the doubters, the moments of fear, they all had shaped him. But it was the music, his passion and perseverance, that had carried him through. With a deep breath, he began to play again, letting the melody tell the story of a young boy who refused to be defined by others, and who found his true voice against all odds. Years passed, and Jamal's dedication to music and his community only deepened. Now a teenager, he had grown into a confident young man who understood the weight of his journey, not just for himself but for others who might face similar challenges. At Crestwood Academy, Jamal became more than just a student. He was a role model. He organized music workshops, inviting local musicians and alumni to share their experiences. His initiative created a new sense of unity and appreciation for diverse talents within the school. Mrs. Whitmore, once a strict and distant teacher, had transformed into a mentor and friend. She proudly watched Jamal step onto bigger stages, including citywide competitions and charity events. Her initial skepticism had been replaced by unwavering support and admiration. Outside school, Jamal's involvement in community programs grew. He volunteered at youth centers, teaching piano to kids who, like him, needed encouragement and an outlet for their voices. Through music, he fostered connection, hope, and resilience. One day, during a local festival, Jamal was invited to perform a special concert celebrating cultural diversity and unity. As he played, the crowd listened intently, moved by the harmony and emotion in his music. The event was a powerful reminder that music transcends boundaries and brings people together. Reflecting on his journey, Jamal often thought back to the moment he was asked to play in that classroom, when what was meant to be a test of humiliation became the start of his triumph. It was a reminder that challenges could become opportunities if met with courage and grace. Jamal's story was no longer just his own, it was a legacy in the making. A legacy of breaking down walls, lifting others up, and proving that talent, passion, and kindness could change minds and hearts. As he closed the lid of his piano after the festival, Jamal smiled softly, knowing his music would continue to inspire long after the last note faded. As Jamal stood backstage at yet another prestigious performance, the glow of the spotlight warming his face, he felt a deep sense of gratitude. The path that had once seemed uncertain and daunting had blossomed into something extraordinary. Every note he played carried with it the story of perseverance, hope, and transformation. Looking out at the sea of faces, friends, teachers, family, and even those who once doubted him, Jamal knew that his journey was about more than music. It was about breaking barriers and building bridges where there had been walls. His experience had taught him invaluable lessons, that kindness and respect could change hearts, that true strength came not from forcing others down but lifting them up, and that every person deserved the chance to be heard and seen for who they truly were. Jamal decided to use his growing influence to advocate for inclusivity and support in schools like Crestwood. He spoke at events and worked with educators to create programs that celebrated diversity and nurtured hidden talents. He wanted every student to feel empowered to share their gifts without fear or judgment. Through scholarships and mentorships, Jamal helped open doors for young musicians who faced challenges similar to those he had overcome. His story became a beacon, reminding others that beginnings don't define endings, and that with passion and courage, anyone can compose their own symphony of success. As the final applause echoed through the hall, Jamal took a moment to reflect on how far he had come, from the hesitant boy asked to perform under pressure, to a confident young man whose music inspired thousands. The piano keys beneath his fingers felt like old friends, steady and welcoming. He played the opening notes of a new piece, one he had written himself, a melody of hope, resilience, and endless possibility. And with each note, Jamal knew the journey was far from over. It had only just begun. With his rising prominence as a gifted musician and advocate, Jamal found himself at the crossroads of opportunity and responsibility. Invitations came pouring in, from music festivals, community events, and even national platforms where he could share not only his music but his message. Despite his growing fame, Jamal remained grounded. He remembered the moments of doubt, the sneers of some classmates, and the cold demeanor of teachers who once underestimated him. Those memories fueled his desire to give back, to ensure that no young person felt unseen or unheard. He started a foundation dedicated to providing music education and mentorship to underserved youth in his city. Partnering with schools, community centers, and local artists, the foundation aimed to break down barriers and create spaces where creativity could flourish regardless of background or circumstance. Jamal's work inspired others to join the cause, volunteers, donors, and fellow musicians eager to make a difference. The foundation hosted workshops, concerts, and scholarship programs that opened doors for countless aspiring musicians. At Crestwood Academy, the impact was tangible. The school's culture began to shift, embracing diversity not just in words but in action. More students felt comfortable expressing themselves, knowing their talents were valued. One afternoon, a young girl approached Jamal after a workshop, her eyes shining with hope. "I never thought I could play piano," she said shyly. "But you showed me it's possible." That moment encapsulated everything Jamal had worked for, a single spark of inspiration spreading wide, lighting the way for others. As he reflected on his journey, from a boy forced into the spotlight under difficult circumstances to a leader inspiring change, Jamal realized that true success wasn't about accolades or applause. It was about the lives touched, the barriers broken, and the legacy built. And so, with music as his voice and compassion as his guide, Jamal continued to compose not just melodies, but a brighter future for all. Years had passed since that first hesitant moment at Crestwood Academy's piano. Jamal had grown into a remarkable young man, whose music and message had touched thousands. But beyond the accolades and the stages, it was the quiet moments, the connections made, the lives changed, that mattered most. One spring evening, Jamal was invited to perform at a gala celebrating youth empowerment and diversity in the arts. The event brought together educators, artists, community leaders, and students from across the country. Jamal knew this was more than just a concert, it was a statement.